Introduction 1. Chen Yan, as an illegitimate child of the Chen family, has been exiled and not accepted by the Chen family. He was impoverished, and in order to earn money for his mother's medical treatment, he had to humbly curry favor with Zhou Tang, who fell in love with him at first sight. Just because Zhou Tang was foolish and had a lot of money, he was so obsessed with him. He watched with pathological indifference as Zhou Tang became more and more entangled in him. He thought he wouldn't be emotional towards her, but Zhou Tang was like a little son, pulling him up from the mud time and time again. He also thought that Zhou Tang would be permanently infatuated with him, but to his surprise, he refused her confession, and Zhou Tang truly disappeared from his world. This time, Chen Yan finally realized that Zhou Tang was also a ruthless person, and that he could really be so decisive in not wanting him. Reunion again, he is already the top official in Beijing, and she is the person who was deceived by her ex-boyfriend and lost her heart and family. He morbidly wanted Zhou Tang to suffer all the pain by his side, but he didn't expect him to be the one who fell deeper and deeper, even abandoning his armor. He was so paranoid that even if Zhou Tang smiled at anyone, he could become jealous and crazy. Introduction 2. Zhou Tang's love for Chen Yan, regardless of everything, has been well known for 3 years. That night, Zhou Tang confessed to Chen Yan in front of everyone, but Chen Yan refused in front of everyone and walked away with the white moonlight. Zhou Tang was disheartened and completely cut off contact with him. Later on, people in Beijing all knew that Chen Yan, the president of Wanqing Group, had suffered a tragic death for the actress Su Yi, the white moonlight. Zhou Tang has always believed so. Until Zhou Tang broke up and actively tried to please another man, Chen Yan finally couldn't sit still. Novel keywords. Only for you, no pop-ups, only for you. Download the complete set of TXT, only for you to read the latest chapters of the software. Chapter 1. Release of good news. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Release of good news. At 10 o'clock in the morning, the commercial giant Wanqing Group in Beijing suddenly released good news, announcing that Wanqing Group President Chen Yan and actress Su Yi will be engaged in half a month. This good news can be said to have made everyone in the northern city boil. As soon as Zhou Tang's office was not busy, several female colleagues couldn't help gossiping with each other. Chen Yan from Wanqing Group really wants to get engaged to Su Yi. So Su Yi is a famous playwright, with so many rumors flying. Chen Yan's marriage to her is a drop in price. Who said it's not right? Chen Yan is a talented person with such a status. He should at least marry a wealthy heiress from a matching family. How could Su Yi's plastic surgery monster be worthy of Chen Yan? Perhaps it's because Chen Yan is too infatuated, so no matter what Su Yi does, Chen Yan still has a deep affection for her. I heard that Chen Yan and Su Yi have been together for 7 years. A few female colleagues, you say a word, I say a word. Zhou Tang is still diligently repairing the pictures in the computer, without intending to interfere. Perhaps her silence was a bit strange at the moment, and her colleague Lu Yu touched her hand with her elbow and smiled, saying, Tang, why aren't you quiet? Can you also talk about whether Chen Yan from Wanqing is compatible with Su Yi? Chen Yan and Su Yi. Zhou Tang pressed the hand of the mouse and stopped for a moment, feeling a hint of sarcasm in his heart. He only said, yes, of course I do. Green tea and dogs, how can they not match? They are simply a perfect match. Chen Yan should have been locked up with Su Yi 7 years ago, so Zhou Tang wouldn't have been pursuing him wholeheartedly for 3 years since her freshman year. Finally, on the night of graduating from high school, she confessed to Chen Yan in front of everyone, but was publicly rejected by Chen Yan, which became a huge joke at Yuming High School. At that time, Chen Yan was doing well. After publicly rejecting her, he disregarded her embarrassment and just walked away, holding Su Yi's hand. It was like completely crushing Zhou Tang's face and 3 years of hard work under his feet. After Zhou Tang finished speaking, he didn't want to say more, but his original good mood was also disrupted by the past, feeling unlucky. She frowned and couldn't help but take her phone and send a message to Mujizho. I want to eat the sweet and sour pork ribs you made today. Later, I will finish work early and go to the Zhou family. Let's go to the supermarket together to buy some ingredients. After the news was sent, Mujizho never replied, and Zhou Tang thought that Mujizho was in a meeting. Since the collapse of her family's Zhou group 2 years ago, when her father accidentally fell off a building and became a vegetative, Mujizho used all of his assets to acquire the Zhou group at a low price in order to protect her father's Zhou group. Later, he secured 2 rounds of financing, which brought the Zhou family back to life. Now that Zhou is gradually improving and her business is also growing, Mujizho is naturally getting busier day by day. Situations like this where she hasn't heard back from her for over an hour are becoming more and more frequent. Zhou Tang didn't think much and continued to work with his head down, completely ignoring the comments from several other colleagues in the office about Chen Yan and Su Yi's marriage. Just half an hour later, a sudden WeChat message came from her phone. She took a look and finally saw Mujizho reply. Tang, there's something wrong with the product sales department tonight, and there should be an all-night meeting. I can't make sweet and sour pork ribs for you anymore. I have arranged a private room in the Yuan building for you and Chu Shang. After work, you can ask Chu Shang to accompany you to eat and go home after breakfast. Zhou Tang sighed and felt disappointed again. After a moment of silence, he replied to Mujizho, okay, please rest more. Then he said to his best friend Chu Shangshang. After work, Chu Shangshang ran from the sales department to Zhou Tang's office to help her tidy up her things, and then drove Zhou Tang to the Yuan building together. Mujizho has always been thoughtful in his work, and the private room reserved in the Yuan building is also Zhou Tang's favorite private room. Even the dishes have been ordered in advance for Zhou Tang. As the waiter served the dishes one by one, Chu Shangshang couldn't help but say, Tang, you made the right choice to be with Mujizho. You see how kind Mujizho is to you. Although I don't have time to accompany you to eat, the dishes I ordered for you are all what you like. As he spoke, his face slightly darkened, and he lowered his head. If Qin Mohang had half of Mujizho, I wouldn't have. Zhou Tang carefully scrutinized the expression on the Chu merchant's face and said, what's wrong? We had an argument with Qin Mohang. Zhou Shangshang took a deep breath and looked up to meet Zhou Tang's eyes, as if he had made up his mind. I want to break up with him, he said. Zhou Tang was taken aback for a moment, but Chu Shangshang didn't want to say much. He began to reorganize his emotions and forced a smile on Zhou Tang, chatting about things. However, the disappointment and sadness in his eyes couldn't be concealed. Zhou Tang felt a little sorry for her and hesitated to ask, do you want to drink? As a senior best friend of Chu merchants, Zhou Tang knew well that when Chu merchants were in a bad mood, they wanted to drink some wine. Zhou Tang of the Chu, Shang, and Shang dynasties glanced at him and sighed, how obvious am I? Zhou Tang nodded and said, your face is filled with the words bad mood, who can't tell? As she spoke, she patted her hand and said, if you want to drink some wine now, I'll accompany you to drink. Chu Shangshang shook his head and said, no need, I'll go to my brother's bar for a drink tonight. The atmosphere there will be better. I'll accompany you, Zhou Tang whispered. Don't you like going to bars? And why don't you hurry back and accompany Mujizho later? Zhou Tang's expression dimmed slightly. He's going to have an all-night meeting and shouldn't be going home. You're not in a good mood, I have to accompany you. Without saying much, the two of them finished their meal and drove towards Chu Shangshang's bar. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Meeting like this. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Meeting like this. Zhou Tang has never really enjoyed occasions like bars, and he only goes to bars a few times. She has always been a well-behaved girl. From childhood to adulthood, except for a few outrageous things she did while chasing Chen Yan in high school, she has always lived a routine life. The bar opened by Chu Shangshang's brother is called USA, located in the center of the most prosperous entertainment city in the north. The entrance of the bar is spectacular, with exquisite and luxurious decoration, and extremely stylish. Inside, there are famous bands stationed in the north, and occasionally third-tier celebrities come to support the venue. The guests are all influential figures from the north. Zhou Tang pulled the Chu merchant to a seat in the brightly lit lobby of the bar. The Chu merchant didn't want to go to a private room and said the atmosphere in the lobby was good. Chu Yi, the brother of Chu Shangshang, also took some time to come over and give a few instructions, and then he went to work. Chu Shangshang waited for Chu Yi to leave, and his face, which had been smiling the previous second, instantly darkened with sadness. He couldn't help but gulp down the wine, and his face turned extremely pale. Zhou Tang also accompanied her for 2 drinks, but her eyes and ears still couldn't adapt to the noisy atmosphere of the bar. She frowned slightly, thought for a while, and then said to Chu Shang, actually Qin Mohang. Maybe he's not what you seem to be. He promised to be with you at that time, maybe just because you're the daughter of the Chu family. She was a newcomer and knew very well why Qin Mohang, who was eager to attack and advance, was getting along with Chu Shangshang. At the beginning, she also gently reminded Chu Shangshang, but Chu Shangshang was in love at the time and couldn't listen at all. Chu Shangshang's eyes suddenly turned red, and his fingers clenched his glass. Tang, I now know that he is with me for money. He doesn't like me at all. He just wants me to buy him all kinds of things, enjoy everything I have, and pull me to invest in his broken company. Now he has found someone stronger than me, and he doesn't even want to deal with me. Zhou Tang sighed and held her hand with heartache. Chu Shangshang couldn't help but burst into tears and said, Tang, it would be great if you said he could have half as much as your Mujizhou. I really envy you. You and Mujizhou are both getting engaged next week, and we are about to achieve success. I have always wanted to achieve success with Qin Mohang, but he doesn't want me anymore. Zhou Tang whispered, Shang, you are so kind. Qin Mohang's failure to cherish you is his loss. Chu Shangshang raised his hand and wiped his eyes fiercely, but no matter how good I am, I can't compare to his subordinates who have money and power. Zhou Tang tightened his grip on the Chu merchant's hand and cautiously comforted, it's not that you can't match the wealth and power of that family, but Qin Mohang doesn't deserve such a good you. Chu merchants couldn't listen. She lowered her head as if abandoned, shook her head with a bitter smile, and didn't want to say anything more. After drinking another bottle of beer, she stood up and said she wanted to go to the bathroom. Zhou Tang stood up and wanted to accompany, but was rejected by Chu Shangshang with red eyes. At this moment, her emotions had completely collapsed and she wanted to go to the bathroom alone to cry. Zhou Tang waited for her to stumble out of the noisy and bustling hall before secretly following her, feeling uneasy. After passing through the luxurious carpet-covered corridor outside the hall, she stood outside the bathroom and waited. She dressed casually today in a light blue long dress, with a well-proportioned and slim figure. Her long hair was draped over her shoulders, and her black hair was straight. In addition, her delicate features and agile deer eyes made her outstanding in temperament, clean and pure, which made passers-by unable to resist looking at her. Zhou Tang was not used to the gaze of these people and was about to move into the women's restroom when suddenly someone hugged her waist and forcibly led her towards the nearby private room. The strong smell of alcohol filled her nose, and Zhou Tang was startled. Subconsciously, she struggled and shouted out, but the man's flower arms were extremely powerful, not allowing her to break free at all. As Zhou Tang was about to be led into the door of the private room by the man with flower arms, his heart trembled. He tightly gripped the door with both hands and refused to enter, shouting for help from those around him. The man with flower arms clearly became impatient and had more strength in his hands. People passing by also wanted to come and help, but they seemed to recognize the identity of the man with flower arms, and suddenly stopped, hesitating. Zhou Tang was pulled unsteadily by the man with flower arms, unable to support herself. Her fingers were about to release the door of the private room. Just then, someone behind her suddenly grabbed her wrist perfectly, and with it came an indifferent voice that was still fresh in her memory even after so many years. "Isn't it that Pang San didn't learn enough last time and still liked to force a woman?" The man with flower arms suddenly stopped and his consciousness relaxed as he hooked around Zhou Tang's waist. Zhou Tang immediately turned around and was about to run, but the man who had just appeared tightly clasped her hand, with such strength that she couldn't break free at all. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Taking hands to help. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Taking hands to help. Zhou Tang's heart skipped a beat, his wrist hurt, and he looked up at the man's slender and elevated back. Just as he was about to struggle, he heard the man with flower arms suddenly sneer and say, coincidentally, "Isn't this Mr. Chen Yan? Mr. Chen, you're really not being kind this time. Last time you messed me up, I admit it. After all, I didn't know that Su Yi was your woman at the time. I met this beautiful woman today first. Can't Mr. Chen win love with a knife?" Chen Yan's voice was calm and emotionless. "Pang San Xiao always likes to force women. Is it interesting? My women are not as pure as this. This is the purest I have ever seen. I won't accept her today, and I won't encounter her in the future. I also advise Mr. Chen not to meddle too much. The last time Pang Feng was able to tolerate Mr. Chen, it doesn't mean he is still so talkative this time." The man with flower arms was determined to win over Zhou Tang, and his tone was quite tough. Zhou Tang's face was full of complexity, and he was a bit uneasy. At this moment it was uncertain whether Chen Yan had recognized her, and whether he would coldly abandon her. After all, Chen Yan had a history of refusing to save her in the face of death, and Chen Yan himself was not a kind-hearted person who could help strangers. But the man with flower arms on the other side is clearly not easy to deal with, and his identity should not be low in Beiqing. If she falls into his hands tonight, even Chu Shangshang's brother may not be able to make her leave completely. At the thought of this, Zhou Tang stopped struggling and carefully hid behind Chen Yan, trying to reduce his sense of presence. Chen Yan slightly curled his lips, with a hint of irony reflected in his black pupils. His face did not fluctuate much, and his calm and noble aura was evident, as if he was all elevated. Looking at Pang Feng in front of him was like looking at an ant. "Whether you Pang Feng is easy to talk to or not has nothing to do with me, but I will take away the person behind me. She is pure and impure, and naturally has nothing to do with you." He completely ignored Pang Feng's threat just now and said these words without much emotion. After speaking, he slowly turned around and led Zhou Tang away, without even paying attention to Pang Feng. It's simply deceiving people too much. Pang Feng's face darkened with anger, and he was about to clench his fists and attack Chen Yan. The other people in the private room immediately ran over and grabbed his arm, urging him, "Pang, calm down. You suffered a big loss last time at Chen Yan's hands. There's really no need to go find mold for a woman this time." "Yeah, Pang Gu. Although that woman looked good just now, she was like a piece of wood and definitely not interesting. How about I ask the bar owner to find a few women for you?" "You!" Pang Feng roared, "Chen Yan is really sick, is he always against me? The last time he took Su Yi, he will take the woman this time. Could it be that the woman was also his?" The few people present looked at each other, carefully considering, as if they had never heard of any other woman besides Su Yi by Chen Yan's side. But Chen Yan has always been aloof and not a meddler. It is widely rumored in the industry that he has a cleanliness fetish, and usually only allows Su Yi to be close to him. No matter how he looks, he doesn't seem like a person who can reach out to help unfamiliar women. Is that possible? Can that woman just now really be the third child raised by Chen Yan behind Su Yi's back? Otherwise, Chen Yan could protect her like that. Pang Feng said what several people around him wanted to say. A few people around nodded one after another. "Damn it, I'm so unlucky. It's hard for me to see a woman. I couldn't bear this bad breath in my heart, just because Chen Yan repeatedly crushed his face on the soles of his feet. Seeing Chen Yan leading Zhou Tang towards the end of the corridor, Pang Feng's eyes flashed with a hint of coldness. He immediately took out his phone and pulled away the camera to take several photos of Chen Yan and Zhou Tang's back. Zhou Tang allowed Chen Yan to lead her forward without struggling with current affairs, and his heart gradually calmed down as he was frightened by Pang Feng. It has to be said that Chen Yan's identity and status are indeed very useful. She lowered her eyes and carefully looked at the hand that Chen Yan had clasped on her wrist, only to feel that his hand was no longer as rough as she remembered it to be. Instead, it had distinct joints, fair and slender, just like his whole body, cold and stunning, giving a deadly attraction. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. What is Zhou Tang? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. What is Zhou Tang? Looking back at how she treated him so well in high school, showing all kinds of hospitality without getting a chance to hold his hand, but now that we suddenly met tonight, he was willing to touch her for the first time. But with Chen Yan's estrangement from her at the beginning and even the unhappy separation after high school graduation, Chen Yan wouldn't even take action to save her, Zhou Tang. Is it difficult? Chen Yan really didn't recognize her at this moment, Zhou Tang. Or, in recent years, he has been doing more charity work due to the relationship with Wanqing Group, and his cold-blooded heart has been slightly influenced by charity work. Therefore, when he saw this unfamiliar woman being bullied, he instinctively stepped forward to help her. Zhou Tang's mind was a bit disorganized, as he was daydreaming about all possible possibilities. At this moment, Chen Yan suddenly let go of her hand and turned to look at her. Zhou Tang suddenly stopped and instinctively looked up at him. He still had a handsome face, black hair and cold eyes, deep ink pupils, and his whole body had shed the desolation and gloom of high school. He exuded an unparalleled elegance and nobility. It has to be said that her past vision was indeed extremely good, and she fell in love with Chen Yan at a glance in high school. No matter where Chen Yan is placed, his appearance stands out among the crowd, handsome and extraordinary, extremely eye-catching. Have you seen enough? Looking carefully, Chen Yan reached out and slowly adjusted the cufflinks, but there was no emotional sound. Zhou Tang suddenly came to his senses, feeling a bit regretful. How could it be that after so many years, when he met Chen Yan in person, he was still so superficially attracted by Chen Yan's appearance? I think Chen Yan is also good looking, and other character traits are simply impossible to look at. As often praised in high school, Chen Yan is a poor and destitute person, and only that face can attract her, Zhou Tang. She is flashy, perhaps a reincarnation of a male fox spirit. Yes, male fox spirit. Now that we meet again 7 years later, Zhou Tang, for the first time, believes that some students at Yuming High School gave Chen Yan an extremely accurate evaluation. He is indeed a male fox spirit. I couldn't help but exclaim in my heart, as layers of past events floated through my mind. At this moment, I inexplicably spoke out what I had in mind. Male fox spirit. Chen Yan's ears were not turned back, and his face instantly faded. Zhou Tang was startled, his toes almost awkwardly digging out a castle on the sole of his shoes, and his expression stiffened slightly. Miss, do you not even have the basic upbringing to be a person? Chen Yan's tone was distant and indifferent, even with a hint of sarcasm. Zhou Tang's mouth twitched slightly, obediently following the instructions without daring to make any sound. Since Zhou's bankruptcy, she has learned to be able to bend and stretch. Although she was initially teased by Chen Yan and Su Yi, a couple of men and women, she was a seasoned person and would not offend Chen Yan in person. After all, this Chen Yan is no longer the same as before. If this person stomped their feet now, the entire northern city would have to tremble for him, let alone he just saved her. Just now, he called her Miss. Is it difficult? He didn't recognize her. You heard me wrong. I was just saying that you are a good person, but I didn't expect Mr. Chen from Wanqing to be such a compassionate person. Thank you for saving me. Zhou Tang opened his eyes and said a lie. There's no need to express sincere gratitude, you can do it yourself. His tone became increasingly indifferent as he turned around and slowly lifted his foot forward. Seeing Chen Yan walking forward like this, leaving only the back of her head for her, without any extra words, her whole body exuded a sense of coercion from birth. Zhou Tang touched his nose and sneered coldly in his heart, thinking that Chen Yan probably didn't want to have more contact with such a small person like her. He followed a few meters forward, then leaned over and pushed open the side door of the bar lobby to enter. Until the side door of the bar was closed, Chen Yan suddenly turned back and glanced at it. With just a few steps, his face had a rare fluctuation. At this moment, Jiang Feng, who had come with him to talk about things, suddenly walked slowly from the corner of the corridor and smiled as if watching a play. I didn't expect that Zhou Tang had really left like this. Speaking of back then, Chen Yan didn't say he had saved her, just smiled at her a little, and that girl was so excited that she could keep up with you for a while. It seems that after so many years, Zhou Tang has really changed. Chen Yan naturally knew that Jiang Feng had been watching the play behind him for a long time. He turned his head to glance at him and said, "Have you negotiated the contract with the partner in the private room? Do you have this free time to take a stroll?" His tone was indifferent, as if he couldn't detect the teasing in his tone. Jiang Feng grinned and said, "With me, Jiang Feng, there's no contract that can't be won. But it's Chen Yan, you. How did you come to rescue Zhou Tang today? Isn't it because so many years have passed and it's suddenly difficult to calm down?" Chen Yan turned around and slowly walked towards the private room not far away. "What kind of thing is Zhou Tang? It's hard for me to calm down." End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Old don't go, new don't come. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Old don't go, new don't come. Jiang Feng was slightly taken aback, then turned to grin and sneer, "Oh, it's still so cold and heartless." He raised his foot and followed behind Chen Yan. "That's right. If you really have feelings for Zhou Tang, you wouldn't have been avoiding her for so many years. If you had chosen Su Yi without hesitation back then, Zhou Tang would have been worthless in your heart. He is Chen Yan's brother and also a good partner. The two have known each other for more than 10 years, so he is clear about the relationship between Chen Yan, Su Yi, and Zhou Tang. But he never expected that in the past, Zhou Tang, in terms of family background, appearance, and even the degree of specialization towards Chen Yan, was hundreds of times better than that of Su Yi. How could Chen Yan be obsessed with one Su Yi instead of the other? Moreover, over the years, Su Yi and Chen Yan have been separated and combined. No matter how much Su Yi is playing outside, Chen Yan is not angry. As long as Su Yi takes the initiative to turn back and seek peace with Chen Yan will accept it. He was really strange. Chen Yan, whom he knew, was just a ruthless person who would seek revenge. How could he possibly indulge Su Yi like that? Jiang Feng couldn't help but wonder in his heart. He also remembered the good news that Chen Yan and Su Yi had just announced today, and couldn't help but ask, "Chen Yan, Su Yi has been breaking up with you for more than half a year this time, right? It's only been a month since we reconciled, and she's about to get engaged to you. You don't think much about this matter anymore. Why do I think it's a bit unrealistic?" Chen Yan's back was straight and he didn't respond. A slight gloomy expression flashed through his eyes, but for a moment it returned to normal. Zhou Tang ran into the hall and sat down in the booth, feeling a little worried that Pang Feng might come to pick trouble again. He was about to invite a bar attendant to take her to find Chu Shangshang's brother, but at that moment, Chu Shangshang came over, swaying and swaying. Zhou Tang quickly helped the Chu merchant sit still and carefully examined her expression. Chu Shangshang's eyes were red and swollen, and he grinned at her, which was even more embarrassing than crying. "Tang Tang, am I looking very ugly now?" Zhou Tang nodded truthfully. It's not ugly, it's really ugly. Chu Shang is at least a charming beauty. It's simply not worth it to make Qin Mohang look like this. Chu Shang took a deep breath and said, I will break up with Qin Mohang when I go back today. When it comes to dealing with scumbags, you just need to cut through the mess quickly, and you can't let him suck your blood anymore. Chu Shang felt that Zhou Tang was right, but he couldn't help feeling uncomfortable in his heart. She sniffed and said, I don't plan to take Qin Mohang anymore. I want to get back all the investment I gave him. But he got involved with someone else behind my back, and I'm not willing to do it. Tang, I've loved him for 2 years. How could he treat me like this? My voice fell and I cried again, tears streaming down my face. Zhou Tang was full of heartache and couldn't help but reach out to embrace her, gently patting her shoulder. After a moment of silence, he whispered, merchants, old ones won't go, new ones won't come. Look at me now, haven't I completely let go of Chen Yan? I've also met Mu Jizhou, and haven't I been living well? She empathized with all the grievances and unwillingness of the Chu merchants at this moment. What Chu Shang has experienced now is exactly what she suffered at Chen Yan back then. Chen Yan was also poor at that time. For his mother's illness and money, he gave her opportunities on the surface, which made her think that Chen Yan was also interested in her. However, no matter what, Qin Mohang was much stronger than Chen Yan back then. At least, Qin Mohang was willing to get along with Chu Shang as a boyfriend and girlfriend, live together with Chu Shang, and care and deceive Chu Shang on the surface. Chen Yan back then was so cold that she didn't even want Zhou Tang to touch her. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Deemed as nothing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Deemed as nothing. Chu Shang's emotions collapsed again, crying in embarrassment, and was eventually discovered by her brother Chu Yi and forcibly taken away. Zhou Tang was ultimately influenced by the emotions of the Chu merchants, and her mood at this moment was not much better. She glanced at the noisy and chaotic lights and the crowd around her, suppressing the chaos in her heart and starting to miss Mu Jizhou's peaceful embrace again. Knowing that Mu Jizhou was in a meeting at the moment, Zhou Tang couldn't help but send Mu Jizhou a WeChat message. Jizhou, did the meeting go smoothly? The message was sent out, and I thought it would take him a long time to reply. I was planning to calm my mind on my own, but Mu Jizhou suddenly replied to WeChat. It went smoothly. Have you gone home yet? Zhou Tang's drooping lips only slightly curled. Not yet, the merchant is not in a good mood today. I accompanied her to have a few drinks at her brother's bar. After this sentence was uttered, she remained silent for 2 seconds and couldn't help but write. Jizhou, I miss you. As soon as this sentence was sent, Mu Jizhou's phone call came in an instant. Zhou Tang hesitated for a moment and instinctively answered the phone. Jizhou. Her voice was tinged with a hint of surprise. Wait for me, I'll pick you up. Aren't you going to have a meeting? The most difficult problem for the product sales department has been solved, and the rest will be decided in tomorrow's meeting. Wait for me, I will come over right away. After hanging up the phone, Zhou Tang's mood improved significantly. Chu Shang was right. Mu Jizhou was really kind to her, taking care of all her emotions, helping her lift Zhou back out of the water, allowing her vegetative father to stay in a particularly expensive special care ward without her having to pay for medical expenses. It must be said that being with Mu Jizhou is indeed Zhou Tang's blessing. Mu Jizhou came very quickly and came over in less than 20 minutes. Zhou Tang immediately got up and ran towards him, crashing into his arms. Her hands tightly wrapped around his waist, and her ears listened to the steady heartbeat in Mu Jizhou's chest. She was so addicted that she wanted to stay for a lifetime without coming out. Mu Jizhou hugged her and asked in a low voice, "Did you drink?" Zhou Tang said in a muffled voice, "Not much, just a little beer." "Jizhou, let's go home." Mu Jizhou reached out to stroke her hair with a gentle gesture, without saying much, and led Zhou Tang's hand towards the outside of the hall. Zhou Tang followed behind him step by step. As soon as they arrived at the parking lot, they suddenly met Chen Yan and his group. Zhou Tang glanced at Chen Yan's dignified appearance, and his heart sank slightly. Chen Yan clearly didn't expect to meet her here. His deep and cold eyes swept straight towards her, with no extra expression on his face. He only glanced at her twice before casually turning his gaze towards Mu Jizhou beside her. He was towering and extremely cold. As Zhou was about to sign a cooperation agreement with a subsidiary of Wanqing Group, Mu Jizhou also recognized Chen Yan and Jiang Feng. After thinking for 2 seconds, he decided to lead Zhou Tang over and say hello. Mr. Chen, Mr. Jiang. Since chasing Zhou Tang, he has known about the past between Zhou Tang and Chen Yan. However, after so many years, Zhou Tang has completely let go of Chen Yan and even fallen in love with him. Naturally, he will not dwell too much on the past between Zhou Tang and Chen Yan. After all, it used to be Zhou Tang's immature admiration, and Zhou Tang and Chen Yan had never been together before. He didn't need to eat anything. Furthermore, Zhou is about to sign a contract with a subsidiary of Wanqing, so it is extremely necessary to give a friendly greeting at this time. However, Chen Yan's gaze across from him was extremely indifferent, completely ignoring his greetings, even without stopping for a moment. He moved forward so naturally, as if seeing his Mu Jizhou as nothing. Having been treated with such inexplicable coldness, Mu Jizhou's eyebrows furrowed almost imperceptibly, and he lifted his eyes to look deeply at Chen Yan. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. What are these words you are listening at novelfull.audio? Chapter 7. What are these words? In an awkward atmosphere, Jiang Feng began to politely smile and said, Mr. Chen and his partner had just drunk a little more, so if we didn't reply to Mr. Mu shouldn't be blamed. Mu Jizhou finally calmed down and hurriedly said, It's okay, it's okay. Jiang Feng nodded and then turned his head to sweep towards Zhou Tang. Zhou Tang naturally also recognized Jiang Feng, and over the years, Jiang Feng's hypocritical appearance of smiling without a smile remained unchanged. Seeing Jiang Feng staring at her all the time, his eyes were full of ambiguous meanings and scrutiny. Zhou Tang felt uncomfortable and extremely resistant in his heart. She vividly remembers that in the past, Jiang Feng knew that Chen Yan had no feelings for her, but he encouraged her to pursue Chen Yan in various ways, completely pushing her into the pit of fire, causing her to wander around in front of Chen Yan like a fool. In the end, Chen Yan mercilessly refused, causing her to lose face. Memories are floating in his mind, and Zhou Tang's expression towards Jiang Feng is not much better. Jiang Feng curled his lips and smiled at Zhou Tang, then asked Mu Jizhou, Is this Mr. Mu's girlfriend? Mu Jizhou said, Well, we're getting engaged next week. If Mr. Jiang and Mr. Chen are available, welcome to the banquet. I'll have my assistant personally deliver the invitation to you tomorrow. Are you getting engaged next week? Jiang Feng's smile paused, somewhat surprised. After a few seconds of silence, he finally agreed, and then instinctively turned his head to look at Chen Yan. Chen Yan had a rare pause this time and turned to look at Mu Jizhou. Compared to the previous disregard, this time he clearly took Mu Jizhou from top to bottom more seriously. Zhou Tang lightly pinched Mu Jizhou's finger and silently signaled for him and her to leave quickly. Mu Jizhou was about to find an excuse to take Zhou Tang away when Chen Yan, who was a few steps away, stared at Zhou Tang and suddenly said, Mr. Mu, is it possible that he is the male fox spirit you mentioned? Zhou Tang's expression froze and he looked at Chen Yan in astonishment. Jiang Feng looked thoughtfully back and forth at Zhou Tang and Chen Yan. Mu Jizhou felt that Chen Yan's gaze at Zhou Tang was too direct, and his words were even more absurd and impolite, which made him slightly uncomfortable. Chen is drunk, so it's better to go back and rest earlier. Otherwise, if he says something out of context while drunk, it's easy to misunderstand, he said. Chen Yan slowly curled his lips and smiled, a smile that didn't reach the bottom of his eyes. It looked so gloomy. He completely ignored Mu Jizhou once again and said to Zhou Tang, since there is a male fox spirit around, don't say fox spirit to other men just because you drank a few sips at the bar. I think your family doesn't mind. The benefactor who saved your life just now is disgusting. Zhou Tang was stunned by the shock. What exactly did Chen Yan say? Just because she unintentionally said, male fox spirit at that time, he was able to repay her with such a vengeful attitude. Zhou Tang tightened his voice and said, Mr. Chen, you saved me just now, and I have already said thank you to you. But we met by chance, and because of the kindness of saving lives, we insulted my fiancée A and me in various ways. What is your quality? Chen Yan chuckled lightly and said, you can talk nonsense to me now. What qualities can you have for a woman like you? Why, your boyfriend can't satisfy you. My appearance has taken away your soul. Listen to what these are all talking about. Years no see, Chen Yan's bloody mouth skills have taken it to the next level. Zhou Tang clenched his fist in anger and stared coldly at Chen Yan. But although Chen Yan was smiling at the moment, her smile was too dark and eye-catching, making her suddenly feel a bit dazed. It seemed like she saw Chen Yan, who had been beaten up by thugs outside of school and had a swollen face and a dark and fierce body. Thinking back to those thugs who were later broken by Chen Yan, Zhou Tang was startled and suddenly regained consciousness. Being aware of the current situation, he didn't want to provoke such a ruthless person as Chen Yan anymore. He only held on to Mu Jizhou's hand, withdrew his flag, and walked away. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. How far can one avoid? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. How far can one avoid? Mu Jizhou's face also darkened slightly, and he only bid farewell to Jiang Feng, ignoring Chen Yan. Chen Yan continued to move forward slowly, as if he had not even paid attention to the episode just now. Jiang Feng's face exploded with meaningful smiles. He followed Chen Yan a few steps and said, you're a bit abnormal today. Why, seeing Zhou Tang getting engaged soon, your heart is unbalanced. Chen Yan's face remained calm. If it's not balanced, can I stay away from her for 4 years? If you have time to gossip, why don't you think about what gift you should give me when I get engaged? Jiang Feng's smile stiffened slightly as he said, you and Su Yi are engaged, and I naturally cannot do without your gift. As he spoke, he couldn't help but sweep in the direction of Zhou Tang and Mu Jizhou, and then he sighed with some sincerity, then Mu Jizhou can be considered young and talented. I heard that this person has been chasing Zhou Tang for a long time, and even reached out to lift him up when Zhou went bankrupt. But I wonder how deep his feelings are for Zhou Tang. Zhou Tang was able to break away from your heartless suffering and marry Mu Jizhou, which is also a good fate. Look at how much love they hold hands with each other. Chen Yan's deep eyes were filled with a hint of contempt and sarcasm. Love. Even now, Zhou Tang will not resist his touch, and even remains as shallow and obsessed with his appearance as before. Can such a half-hearted woman have true love? Is it a good fate? Mu Jizhou was just a scumbag, waiting to see how Zhou Tang, the woman, fell from the clouds and turned into a pile of mud. At this moment, Zhou Tang, who had no idea about Chen Yan for a long time, clearly did not know that he had been arranged by Chen Yan to be a half-hearted person. At this moment, she was afraid that Mu Jizhou would get angry and was wholeheartedly leading him onto the car. Mu Jizhou's mood sank slightly, with no smile on his face. After getting in the car, he didn't immediately start it and only asked Zhou Tang, when did you meet Chen Yan tonight? He even saved you. He knew that Zhou Tang didn't have much in mind about Chen Yan, but Chen Yan's recent words really made him feel uncomfortable. Zhou Tang carefully scrutinized his face, his fingers ingrained in his palm as if pleasing him. Ji Zhou, when I was waiting for a business at the entrance of the bar bathroom tonight, I met someone named Pang Feng. Pang Feng wanted to forcibly pull me into a private room, but Chen Yan suddenly saved me. But I swore that Chen Yan didn't recognize me, didn't talk to me much, and I only thanked him before leaving without much interaction. I don't know why Chen Yan said that just now, maybe he drank too much and went insane. She didn't slander Chen Yan either. Chen Yan also had a criminal record when he went insane. After all, there was a time when Chen Yan got drunk, and he really went to fight with someone in the middle of the night, crazily beating them to death, as if he had gone insane. If it weren't for her trembling and pulling them apart at that time, Chen Yan would have killed someone and gone to jail. Where else would Chen Yan and Su Yi be? If she had known this earlier, she shouldn't have gone to hold the Chen banquet and shouldn't have been meddling in the mess of the Chen banquet. Ji Zhou, Chen Yan is really a very tasteless person. We shouldn't let this kind of person affect our mood. Zhou Tang disdained Chen Yan for a while before saying to Mu Ji Zhou again. Her fingers also moved slightly, tightly interlocking with his 10 fingers. Mu Ji Zhou sighed and clenched Zhou Tang's hand, as if all the ups and downs of his emotions were soothed by Zhou Tang's gentle and pleasing voice. He nodded at Zhou Tang and said, "Tang Tang is right." As he spoke, he began to start the car. However, after a while, he suddenly remembered Zhou Tang's initial words and turned to look at him. "Tang Tang, do you think Chen Yan didn't recognize you?" Zhou Tang quickly nodded and said, "That's for sure. If he recognizes me, how could he possibly save me? You don't know how cold and repulsive Chen Yan used to be towards me. Is that right?" Mu Jizhou smiled helplessly and couldn't help but reach out to touch Zhou Tang's head again, feeling that his girlfriend might not know how outstanding her appearance was. He sometimes thinks that Zhou Tang is really foolish, innocent and naive, but he is also foolish enough to make him repeatedly break the rules because of her, soften his heart because of her, and be reluctant to part with her. He has never really met such a pure and clean girl before. "Tang Tang, you know better than I what Chen Yan is like. No matter what reason he saved you tonight, you must avoid him in time when you see him in the future." Mu Jizhou withdrew his hand and gently instructed Zhou Tang. Zhou Tang quickly nodded. Don't say she doesn't want to see Chen Yan, then Chen Yan doesn't want to see her either. After all these years of meeting, it has made her so awkward and embarrassed. She really dares not meet Chen Yan next time. Seeing Mu Jizhou's face gradually improve, Zhou Tang calmed down. After returning home, Zhou Tang leisurely leaned against the bed and played with his phone after taking a shower. Mu Jizhou also took clean pajamas and went to the bathroom to take a shower. In a moment, Mu Jizhou's phone, which was being charged on the bedside table, suddenly rang. Zhou Tang slowly climbed over and picked up the phone. When he saw the name, Chen Qian, displayed on the screen, he instinctively pressed the answer button. Chen Qian is Mu Jizhou's secretary and she is very familiar with him. Usually at night, Mu Jizhou often receives phone calls from Chen Qian to report her work. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Did you make the wrong phone number? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Did you make the wrong phone number? Zhou Tang pressed the answer button and held his phone to his ear. He was about to tell Chen Qian that Mu Jizhou was taking a shower, but it was not convenient to answer her phone at the moment. Unexpectedly, Chen Qian's voice suddenly came through the phone. "Jizhou, have you softened your heart towards Zhou Tang? You promised to accompany me on my birthday today. Why do you have to go find Zhou Tang again on this special day?" As if questioning, as if feeling so aggrieved that she was about to burst into tears, Chen Qian spoke at an extremely fast pace and spoke with such a crackling sound. When Zhou Tang reached his mouth, he suddenly choked and felt his head suddenly hit by something, buzzing and making a sound. His heart seemed to be instantly pierced by something, some shocked, some painful, and some confused. Is today April Fool's Day? Why did even Mu Jizhou's secretary start talking nonsense? "Chen Qian, what's wrong with you? Did you call the wrong number?" Zhou Tang asked in a low voice, a bit unresponsive, and his head was still a bit numb. She also seemed to remember Chen Yan shouting the word "Ji Zhou" as soon as she answered the phone, indicating that the call was likely not made wrong. Chen Yan on the other side of the phone suddenly fell silent, not explaining or hanging up. I don't know what kind of mentality it was. Zhou Tang's face also tingled slightly, and in this silent and stagnant atmosphere, his heart seemed to stop beating. Tang, whose phone is it? Just then, Mu Jizhou wrapped himself in a towel and came out. He has a handsome appearance, deep and straight facial features, and a soft smile on his face. In addition, his upper body has no trace of anything, and his skin is fair and smooth, giving people infinite imagination. However, this time, Zhou Tang didn't have much heart to appreciate his skin and his voice tightened a bit. Chen Yan called, he said. Mu Jizhou's eyebrows furrowed subconsciously, and for a moment they returned to their original state. He quickly took the phone from Zhou Tang's hand and whispered to Chen Yan, "It's so late, there's no need to discuss product sales anymore. Remember, your identity is just a secretary, and you don't need to call again tonight, otherwise you don't have to be a secretary anymore." His tone was quite indifferent, even with a feeling of impatience and frustration. His profile also showed a hint of impatience, and he suddenly became so unfamiliar that it shook her a bit. Zhou Tang's gaze tightened, only realizing that Mu Jizhou at this moment was particularly similar to the cold and ruthless Chen Yan before. But he is Mu Jizhou, the one in her eyes who has always been sunny, enthusiastic, and full of vitality. After Mu Jizhou finished speaking, he hung up the phone extremely abruptly and turned to look at Zhou Tang. Although his expression had quickly changed, the remaining impatience and anxiety in his eyes were still very obvious. Tang, Chen Yan won't call to report her work at night anymore. I won't be busy with work anymore when I come home from work. I'll be with you well. I've been busy lately, and I've really overlooked you a bit. I won't be able to do it in the future. His tone was gentle. Speaking, he leaned over and embraced Zhou Tang, slowly lowering his head. His lips were extremely gentle and slowly imprinted on Zhou Tang's forehead. For some reason, Zhou Tang inexplicably felt a hint of solemnity in his affectionate movements at this moment. Mu Jizhou used to kiss her often, gentle and curled up, but this time it was serious. Kiss her forehead solemnly and cherish, as if determined. But Chen Yan's recent words were still intertwined in her mind, causing her to push Mu Jizhou away with some uncontrollable emotions. Mu Jizhou was stunned for a moment, his eyes quickly tinged with a hint of surprise. Zhou Tang stared closely at him and said, "Ji Zhou, it seems that Chen Yan just called not to report on work." End of this chapter. Chapter 10, but you haven't tried on your dress yet. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10, but you haven't tried on your dress yet. Mu Jizhou appeared to be sitting upright with a calm expression on his face, his gaze fixed on Zhou Tang's face without any waves, waiting for her to speak later. Zhou Tang met his gaze and said, "As soon as I answered the phone, she was questioning why you didn't spend your birthday with her all day today and why you came looking for me. Ji Zhou, between you and Chen Yan." Mu Jizhou sighed with a hint of helplessness in his tone. Tang, there are some things I didn't want to say, I just didn't want to make you worry. But now that Chen Yan has made such a phone call, I won't hide it from you. I don't know when Chen Yan has been thinking about me, but I don't have any feelings for her. Usually, we only communicate on business and have no other feelings. Today, the secretary's office is also very busy, and I thought the meeting would be all night. After learning that Chen Yan can't attend the birthday banquet prepared by her family today, I asked her colleagues in the administrative department to order a cake for her in advance, intending to have her. During the meeting, she was asked to cut a cake and it was also considered her birthday, but unexpectedly, it made her misunderstand. So it's like this. Zhou Tang rubbed his stiff face, took a deep breath, and slightly calmed down. Mu Jizhou once again pulled her into his arms and said, Tang, don't think too much. You know how I feel for you. We're getting engaged next week, and I hope you're happy and don't let anything affect your mood. When we're engaged, I'll take another break and take you on a trip. Zhou Tang nodded in his arms, and Mu Jizhou hugged her with a light smile. He gently stroked her hair with his fingers, then lowered his head slightly. This time, he didn't kiss Zhou Tang's forehead, but kissed her lips from shallow to deep. The temperature inside the house suddenly rose. Zhou Tang was kissed so much that she felt dizzy and disoriented. She had forgotten all the unhappiness of the day, but Mu Jizhou reached the crucial final step and stopped once again. Zhou Tang was stunned, his eyes floating and his mind still couldn't turn. However, Mu Jizhou got off her body and lay beside her, holding her in his arms. He gently said, "Tang Tang, you're also tired tonight. Take a good sleep." Zhou Tang tightly wrapped himself around the corner and thought for a while, "Jizhou, actually, I'm not a very conservative person either. You don't have to be too accommodating to me. If we had a relationship before marriage, I can accept it too." By the time she finished speaking, her ears had already turned red. Mu Jizhou doted on kissing her lips and said, "I know. It's just that my Tang Tang is worth the best, and I won't let you suffer any injustice. When we get married, I will make you truly become my person." His voice remains gentle, with a hint of solemnity and cherishing. Zhou Tang's face stiffened slightly, and he couldn't help but sigh in his heart, feeling a bit disappointed and helpless. Having been with Mu Jizhou for so long, she has never had any relationship with him. Even though both of them love each other, they find it difficult to control themselves in matters of love. But Mu Jizhou is just too a gentleman, always able to stop the car with her at the most critical moment. It has to be said that Mu Jizhou's endurance is really not average. But that's also good, she doesn't have to worry about Chen Yan hooking up Mu Jizhou. How could someone who could calm down in such a situation casually get involved with Chen Yan? Zhou Tang has great confidence in Mu Jizhou. In the next few days, Mu Jizhou did indeed return home early after work every day, and did not answer any work calls, just wholeheartedly accompanying her. During the weekend break, Zhou Tang and Mu Jizhou went to the mall to try on the high-end dress of the D family, preparing for the engagement banquet next Tuesday. Zhou Tang chose a light pink strapless long gauze skirt from the D family's early spring collection. The style of the gauze skirt is excellent, with strings of brightly colored flowers hanging on the skirt, which is very beautiful. Zhou Tangren is tall and slender, with fair skin and delicate small face. Her smile is particularly innocent and beautiful. After putting on this gauze skirt, her whole aura is ethereal, which amazed the female staff who helped her try on the dress. "Miss Zhou, you look like a fairy in this dress." The staff spoke well, and Zhou Tang smiled shyly. As she slowly walked out of the fitting room, she saw Mu Jizhou standing beside her with a stunned expression, his eyes full of amazement. "Does it look good?" Zhou Tang approached him with a smile, delicately holding the hem of her skirt and spinning around in front of him, asking with a smile. Mu Jizhou took her hand and carefully looked at her, saying gently, "It looks very nice." Being praised so seriously by him, Zhou Tang blushed a bit and immediately urged him to go in and try on his formal dress. Mu Jizhou nodded obediently and smiled as he took the high-end dress that another staff member had just brought and was about to go to the fitting room to try it on. However, at that moment, his phone suddenly rang. Mu Jizhou instinctively took out his phone and frowned in an instant. Zhou Tang was close to him and saw the word Chen Yan on Mu Jizhou's phone screen again, feeling a slight discomfort in his heart. However, Mu Jizhou had already answered the phone and asked calmly, "What's going on?" "But I didn't know what Chen Yan had said on the phone." Mu Jizhou's face suddenly turned white, and the impatience in his eyes was instantly shocked and anxious. In just a few seconds, he quickly hung up the phone and turned to look at Zhou Tang, as if trying to calm down. "Tang Tang, I have an urgent matter at the company right now, and I need to go to the company immediately," he said. "Is that right?" Zhou Tang took a deep breath, feeling as if something was about to break out of control. Her fingers suddenly grasped the hem of her skirt and looked at him with complex eyes, but you haven't tried on your dress yet. Ji Zhou, we're getting engaged in a few days. End of this chapter.